I don't think that there was a lot of cheering at the in the prisons housing the KU bagmen, Jim Gatto, Merle Code. We are still on our thoughts. I don't
That's
know if
right.
I don't know if you still get a cut. Maybe you could put some money on your books, something like that.
Right.
They're probably rooting for Carolina.
Yeah, I certainly was thinking of Jim Gatto, especially since Kansas had the temerity to sue him on top of everything else tonight. And yeah, those guys that are literally in prison while Kansas was winning because TJ Gassnola helped Bill Self get a couple real guys.
We make the jokes on Gatto and the 5 level 1 violations and stuff, but like as best I can tell, there was no mention of that the entire weekend on any of the broadcasts. You don't hear about it on ESPN or anything like that. I know we're curmudgeons and we go directly to the negative at all times in all stories. But should it get mentioned during a game?
Hell yes. It's part of the story. It's an inconvenient truth. I'm sorry, but it's true. And it's part of, it is the context that hangs over this team, this program, this season is they have been under investigation for years for major violations. And if the NCAA weren't an organizational train wreck, they would have resolved it by now. And the resolution may well have included Kansas not playing in this tournament because the 5 level 1 violations, lack of institutional control, head coach responsibility, those are the building blocks of a postseason ban, a long suspension for self. Those things could happen. And they just haven't happened because they haven't resolved anything. And that, to me, they're a champion for our times because, they've been under the microscope for this, but have done nothing. They have not penalized themselves one iota, and they've just basically waited it out. And the NCAA has been powerless to do anything about it. So yes, should CBS and ESPN and everybody else have talked about it? Sure should have. And
I agree. Even if it's that this isn't, maybe Kansas wins the case and gets acquitted, right?
Yeah,
or whatever,
maybe.
Right? Found not guilty, then they shouldn't have had this hanging over them. I think it's motivation. I think it's motivation for self. I think it's all these things. I agreed. I think I wrote this is the perfect NCAA basketball story.
Yeah,
Kansas winning this thing. It didn't matter, and yet it did. But the just collective, utter silence on it.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you go on Twitter or different things, everyone's talking about it, and they're going right back at the other stuff of, well, Carolina had a decade plus of no-show classes, which is a far greater egregious thing to do to the student athletes, is not actually make them students at times than Billy Preston's mom getting 89 grand.
Right.
Like that. But it's an amazing thing. That's just like, no, we will sanitize this. We will. Don't you think when and I guess public opinion has changed on this stuff, but that doesn't really mean anything because it's still going on. When it was Vegas, this was discussed, right?
Of course.
Nonstop.
Yes. When Vegas was constantly under investigation in the late 80s, early 90s, and they won a championship, went to another Final Four, sure. That was part of the storyline. I don't recall anybody denying that existed or just ignoring it. That's for sure.
Very weird dynamic. Don't mention it. We can't mention it.
Yeah.
Why? It's going on. It's part. I don't even care what happens to Kansas.
But I find it cowardly that there's no mention of that. So that is absolutely poor form. And you're right. Now, look, there's no saints in college basketball. We know that as well as anybody. You mentioned the Carolina 2 decades of academic fraud that they skated on.
Right. Zion Williamson.
There's one of the violations or one of the parts of the investigation of Kansas pertained to Curtis Townsend talking about what they were going to try to do in terms of housing, job, whatever, to get Zion Williamson. They didn't get him. He went to Duke. You think Duke just got him for free? No, nobody thinks that. So 3/4 of the Final Four.
Only the internal investigation by Duke thinks that.
That's right.
And the NCAA wouldn't even investigate Duke.
Right. No.
It was ridiculous. Come on.
Yeah.
Zion's been sued, and give me a break.
Yeah.
I think Zion was worth millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
And fortunately now he can get it. And fortunately all this stuff's legal. It just was a little bit off-putting that it's like we just have to pretend this stuff isn't happening.